All right, everyone. Today we have a very exciting podcast for everyone. So if you go back in your time machine back to May of 2021, it was episode number 70, and we had Scott on from Unreal Cinema to talk about his Knights of the Old Republic film that he was doing in the Unreal Engine on YouTube. It looked awesome. It sounded awesome. We talked to him, and then finally, just a couple of weeks ago, December 24th, Christmas Eve, the Malik short film came out. And today we are joined by none other than Malik himself, Daniel Hodge. Daniel, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We are very excited to have you on. Very excited to learn a little bit more about you and more about the project. So, I guess to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your kind of background is with voice acting? How did you get involved with this project?
Well, I was primarily growing up an artist, and when it came to voice acting, I kind of stumbled into it. I didn't have any intention really of doing voice acting. It was I was stuck up in a different state. I had moved up there after I graduated high school because I needed to find a job, and I had been applying all summer for jobs around after I turned 18 locally, and we had just kind of hit that recession after I got out of high school where nobody really wanted to hire, especially if you didn't have experience. So my folks had a friend who was starting up a business with them up in North Dakota, and I moved up there, and I was going to live up there for 6 weeks to 8 months or so and see how it would go working for them. And in the meantime, I found a different job, and I kind of started working up there, making pretty much minimum wage and just living on my own. Well, I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment and didn't have really much to do. I had no furniture except a couch, my bed, and a chair. And I had a computer that I had invested some money in before, a desktop that I just had on the floor. I didn't even have a desk. And I was kind of bored because I was just, when I could play video games. And in the meantime, I would just spend time browsing YouTube. So I came across groups of people who were doing things called fan dubs and stuff for anime or cartoons, and I would like watching these people who would create their own fan recordings of characters who were normally voiced by celebrities. And I always would watch them and could tell, like, some of them, were good and some of them weren't, and I could tell what the ones who weren't really doing it, were doing correctly. So I try to give some people advice because I'm like, look, you should really try to do this with your voice because I can hear this is kind of what's going on. And a lot of them were like, well, have you ever done it before? And I'm like, well, no. So they're like, well, what are you talking? You don't know what you're talking about then. I was like, well, fine, I'll show you. So I went out to the store and I bought a $20 Logitech little headset, all I could afford at the time, and plugged it in, and I started making little voice recordings and super embarrassed about it. Kept screaming lines and things, and going out and checking outside my apartment door into the hallway to make sure I wasn't upsetting anybody or freaking anybody out because I was screaming these character lines. And I was very shut in, very quiet person, so I, of course, was very conscientious about things I was saying. But eventually I started getting people who were commenting on my work, and then I got invited into a group who did dub these kind of things. That it never really took off. We kind of kept making stuff, but it never actually got published on YouTube. And I joined this Facebook group, and then eventually I just started making whatever I thought was cool and posting it on my YouTube channel as far as impersonations. And I started getting tons and tons of feedback and people who really, really liked it, who asked me if I could be some character I didn't even think about playing in some other project they had going on. So from there, it just kind of went. I did a couple of fan dubs. I entered into the abridged series of, like, a Hellsing abridged series that was starting up around the same time Team 4-Star did theirs. I went on to then do Halo Machinima, and then from Halo Machinima for a few years, I kept doing that until I bumped into mods for games like Skyrim and Fallout, and pretty much did that since 2013 all the way up until, so I'm still doing it today. I'm still doing a lot of mods for video games, to the point that I've done for like Skyrim so many mods that at least probably one person has played a mod out there. Every person has played one mod that I voiced in, because I've done like over 24 now. So
awesome.
It's been a long time, but I've come from being the budding amateur into a professional through these kind of fan projects that I started voicing for, kind of like what I've done with Unreal Cinema. And I've decided to kind of pursue it as a career. So I've taken it on where I'm now getting paid professionally for my work. I've done full-on video games. I've gotten to do 2 films as one of the main characters, and I'm still doing as much as I can whenever I can get roles for video games or animations that come along. And this one with Unreal Cinema is probably one of the most exciting projects I could ever be a part of, because of how much I love KOTOR and have always been in love with the universe since I was a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's very cool to hear that you're a KOTOR fan, back before this project came up, because that was one of the big things we were wondering. How did all of you, the voice actors that are in this Malik film, what was your introduction to KOTOR? So I guess let's start there. Knights of the Old Republic. It came out in 2003, but when did you first get into this world?
Definitely same time it came out. I was interested in trying every new type of video game that came fresh off the shelf, and I was always going down to my local Blockbuster and trying out games. One of my buddies across the street actually first bought Knights of the Old Republic, or he got it gifted from his folks, I can't remember, but he started playing it, and watching it, I was intrigued by what I saw, and they were playing it, and I would come over and watch them kind of get through in the beginning. And when I found out by asking them questions what the game was like, I had to go and check it out for myself. But it was mostly I played over at their house because I couldn't afford an original Xbox when they first came out. But I eventually went out and bought one for myself and got the game. And in the meantime, had been playing it on and off over at my friend's house all the time. So once I finally played through it, I played through it as, a kid, like over and over and over again, beating it many, many times, at least like 10 times back then, and have done many playthroughs since. But the relationship I had to the characters, because I loved playing through the story so many times and seeing all the different types of variety of conversation and outcomes that could happen. And the storyline to me, because I was a Star Wars fan from a young age, about 6 or 7. So the story for me was so engaging because I was so directly involved to it. And the movies back then I liked, but they were a very enclosed story, and we were still waiting for the story to be completed back then. Episode 2 was just coming out. We hadn't even seen episode 3. So this was like a Star Wars that felt complete for me because the story began and ended with the game. And I could explore the characters, and the world of Star Wars opened up to me because there was so much without much internet I had back then. I didn't even have high-speed internet. I didn't know about Star Wars until I played those games, about races and characters and the planets and the rules of how it all worked. So it made the films, and what the films didn't explain, that much more interesting to me because it opened my eyes to what Star Wars was. So I enjoyed KOTOR probably more than... It's what got me into starting reading more Star Wars books. It what got me into watching some of the TV shows that came out, because I always wanted to know more about this world because of how interesting KOTOR was. Yeah,
definitely. That was one of the things that really drew myself to it, I know, is like you said, it really just kind of expanded the lore of what Star Wars was. It let you kind of, play around in those worlds and interact with different people and kind of have your own adventure in a way. And I think a lot of people just kind of, latched onto that, which is, why, all, 20 years later almost, we're still doing things like having podcasts about it and doing fan films about it and, recording dialogue for it and stuff. And that's just really awesome. So I guess I have to ask then. So you've been playing KOTOR for a long time, and now you're probably prejudiced as to who your favorite characters are. But take us back in the time machine. Who are your favorite characters? Who are your favorite companions back then?
Well, all of my friends, of course, loved the classic ones. They loved HK. The HK and Bastila were probably the two most popular among my friends. I always did like Canderous and Malik as some of my favorite characters. It was always my kind of bias with them because I loved listening to Canderous's war stories and the clear attitude he had about the war and everything. How very opposite he was to Karth and very much the rest of the crew, where he was a guy who he didn't have so many demons that he had to get over. He was kind of over his life and had his decisions figured out, and he was a lot about thinking forward, which is refreshing because with so many people you're talking to in the game who are all about obsessed with their past, like Bastila or Karth, you have this character who is a very forward thinker who you can talk to about problems that are coming and less about problems that happened to him, but he's always happy to tell you about things that he did. And with a character like Bastila or Karth who constantly turn you down because they don't really want to talk about themselves and they feel awkward about it, it was nice to have somebody so open. And I enjoyed probably I enjoyed Mission very much as a character because it was almost like having a daughter almost in relation to your character that you got to kind of be funny with, and also just hear these really sad stories from about what she had to go through before you came along and have on your team. So there was a very emotional connection because as somebody who has, who has had a rough life, if you've had one when you're younger, you can kind of understand what a person can go through when they're alone or haven't had somebody around to help guide them. And then for somebody like that, for what she had gone through, to still have such a bubbly, upbeat personality, that is something that even my friends have kind of like, despite some things that I've gone through in my past, they've said it's kind of funny that I can have such a positive outlook on life when usually they can have such a negative mindset out of things they've had to deal with in life. And I find a drive that despite how many bad things that can happen to a person, how good it is that we can stay positive and still be happy each day. And that was one of the things that I really liked about Mission was her general upbeat positivity and her relationship to Zalbar. So the characters that I've always kind of fallen in love with was, Canderous and Malak first, but Karth and Bastila, HK, I mean, it's so hard to pick which one because they really
right.
become like a family throughout the whole game. But Malak for me was a villain that I liked more so even than some people don't like me saying Darth Vader or, Palpatine. But not that because he's a better written character, but because he's a character more closely connected to you and your personal story. He has a personal stake in your decisions and caring about the decisions you make, caring about your existence and how much of it is a threat to him. So it's an awkward situation for you in the game because your character shares a history with this other character, but doesn't remember all the things that keep that character so interwoven and obsessed with you. So you have this almost dispassionate indifference towards the character outside of the fact that he's a threat to your goal and he needs to be taken out. So there's a tragedy to the fact that Revan doesn't remember who he is or what he did or this life that he had before, to the very much that even Malak, he sees you as just a husk of your former self that has to be put down because you don't remember how great you were or the great things that you both accomplished. And that was a very tragic part of the character, that basically his only friend in the world is dead, and he has to play this finality of walking to the end confrontation between the both of them, and he has, nothing but this empty person who doesn't remember everything they went through, that he has as an obstacle to defeat. That you're a dead man walking, and he just needs to do the final blow. But he doesn't expect you to have become a better person than he or Revan could have ever been. So it is very much a feeling I have to the character where he feels tragic from the very beginning for me all the way to the end, because he is a person who has lost everything already. In everything he even cared about up until the end, he didn't realize how much he still kind of cared until after you defeat him, and he feels regret in the end over the journey that both of you had shared. So the character feels immensely personal because of the bond that your character had, that and the effect that you had on their life, much like the effect you have with your current companions. The entire galaxy was affected because of your past life's decisions that led into what you had to do now. So it was a character, a villain that I felt closely bonded to, despite the fact we didn't get to spend too much time to. And I felt a certain level of understanding to the fact that I loved the way that the character was tragically gone from a more quiet, angry type younger character all the way up into this completely dominated evil Sith Lord personality, where the entire personality that he had become was also what was broken into him by his old master, by you. So his personality, despite whatever you say that he went down this journey himself, or that he made these decisions, was still created and affected by Revan. It was still shaped by him and made even more cruel in this other shadow of his former self.
Yeah, that's incredibly well said. Canderous and Malik can seem like very different characters, but they are both impacted by the Mandalorian War. And I think, like, when I first played the game, I'm like, oh, this guy's just supposed to be like a Darth Vader stand-in, like he has the metallic-y voice and he's kind of intimidating, and maybe some people on the creative team are just like, Malik Jaw, like, bad guy, that's it. But, like, kind of really, like, getting to understand the characters while we run this podcast. And, like, a lot of fans have kind of latched on to this character. Is he has a very tragic backstory, and he's just always kind of defined by Revan, and, like, he can never let that go, and it is so tragic. He's more than just Jaw dude, and
right.
more than Jaws, but I also like what you said about Canderous. One question I have for you is, what do you kind of think, like, Canderous's arc is? Like, why does he stay with Revan after getting off of Terrace? Like, why does he stick around, do you think?
Well, what he talks about when you first kind of talk to him in the beginning is he's more so just interested in getting off planet and just living a different life than the pattern that he found himself going into. He, as a Mandalorian, is obsessed with growth and continuing and progressing forward for both him and his people, but he feels like he's distant and he's running around in circles on Terrace, making his living, but not growing, not finding a purpose. He wants his life to mean something. And when he talks about the old war, the thing that he was always in awe about, aside from Mandalore himself, was Revan and his genius. And when he finds out that the person he's with is that person he idolized and was obsessed over because of how brilliant they were as a tactician, as a fighter, and a warrior, he couldn't be more happy than to find somebody better than him out there, still better than him, who lives after Mandalore's death and so many of the other Mandalorians are gone, when he believes him to be one of the last good Mandalorian warriors out there, as he sees the other aspects of his race and clan that are reduced to bandits and local thugs and stuff everywhere. He feels like the Mandalorians have fallen, not just from the war, but totally as a race, because they are not as great as they once were, and he needs to train the new generation to be as great as they once were, to relive their glory and to train the next generation. When it came to Revan and him finding that out, it was eventually, once I find a person who isn't as capable as this, I'll probably move on. But when he found Revan, who he clearly admired more than Malik or anybody else out there, there was nobody in the entire galaxy that he knew that could be a more suitable leader for him. So he went from deciding to become a leader to being a follower of somebody who he felt would be worthy of leading him, even if he didn't aspire to anything greater other than just being the associate or the bodyguard to this person, to walk side by side in all the deeds and accomplishments they made. And when it came to Revan deciding to go away and giving his orders to him and telling him that he needed to train the next generation to build up the Mandalorians to be ready for when he returned from unknown space, that there would be an army needed for what was coming, he followed that order, regardless of what his personal selfish desire was to join him out there, was because he always follows orders of those who are superior to him, because he believes fully as a Mandalorian that you will only become great by following those greater in their footsteps. And that's why he was obsessed with following anything that Revan said, because if it's Revan, he knows better. He knows what's best for me, and he knows what's best for the galaxy, and I'll do anything he says. And the Mandalorian is trained from their youth to always follow orders from those who are more experienced and who instruct them, because it's the ones that will keep them alive and to live out those days of glory to the fullest and to have the greatest death possible towards the end of their life. And Canderous is just that kind of character who will go to any lengths to accomplish a task set before him or to prove himself, because he feels, as all Mandalorians did, or as all Mandalorians were raised to be, that that is his goal. That is his lifelong dream, is to achieve more than any other Mandalorian, or if he can, more than any other man has in the entire galaxy, and follow in the footsteps of those greater.
Yeah, you really understand, like, the characters in depth, like their history and like kind of the universe of KOTOR. So I'm very impressed. So
yeah, that's great. One of the things Cassie mentioned it, and you talked a little bit about it, Daniel, is in the game. Malik is kind of a one-dimensional character, and you don't really start to understand him or his motivations, kind of where he's at mentally in his own headspace, until you've had the chance to play through the game a couple of times, or to hear about the game and kind of start dissecting everyone else's stories, and then his story starts to become a little bit more clear. And I think for Cassia and myself both, when this project from Unreal Cinema, it turned into this Malik story, we were both pretty excited about that, because we've really come to appreciate his story and his arc through this KOTOR universe. So yeah, that was something that was very exciting to us when it started to move in this direction.
Yeah, I had always been interested in the concept. I was actually making my own little audio-only segment, because I don't have the means of crafting anything visually at the moment, but I was trying to make an audio, almost radio drama short, voiced entirely by me, about the exchange of how Malak lost his jaw. Because I felt like that was a character defining moment, and I always wanted to know, or at least come up with the story about how that happened. And it wasn't until at one point when we had been approached by the team, and then Scott came forward with this idea of, look, I want to do these shorts while we wait, for the episode to be complete, and I want to give people something. I want to tell this story, a Malik story, and I want it to be about how he lost his jaw. And I was just floored because that was something I was currently working on myself that I hadn't even talked to Scott about. But I was ecstatic that I would be able to see something like that, to actually witness it. And I couldn't picture it in my head exactly what he had in mind at the time, but it was something I was very eager to see put to screen.
Did you kind of mention any of the ideas you had?
No, and the talks I have with Scott are very seldom, very brief. We have quick meetings, and I give him the floor to get off, whatever he needs to say. If I do have suggestions on the side, I'll send it to him. But I didn't want to stifle his creative process, because he could, if I said anything before seeing a script, then he might be affected by that, and I wanted to see what he had in mind first, because it could probably be better than what I crafted. I had some basic ideas of how I wanted it to go down, but I was still in the early stages as well. So I had mentioned, I think that I thought it would be on Korriban or something, or when they were retaking the planets back over, it would be at a point where they would decidedly, Malik would have the issue of Revan being too weak or being too sentimental, and him challenging Revan, so that Revan had to put him in his place. Mm-hmm. And I figured that would be a reason to focus on enough. But I didn't understand when the short was coming up how much more visual it was going to be, and less narration, less narrative explained, because there's a lot of people who can figure out for themselves what the reason might have been for why the jaw was taken off, but it was very much a cinematic experience to show how that happened rather than tell why it happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why movies, films, and shows are created, is to show, not tell. And that can be the fun thing and also the difficult part of creating visual entertainment, because sometimes it's easier just to have one character say, like, you remember when we met Bob like 5 years ago, and here's what we're doing today, even though you do it every day. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to show it visually. Otherwise you're kind of failing. And it's cool to hear that you kind of have been thinking about doing a radio drama and stuff, like, because sometimes I've kicked around the idea of like a Kotor radio drama, and in a way I guess we're sort of like pitching, or I guess we pitched like what we would think like a Kotor 1 adaptation would be like in a film trilogy, like on our podcast, like, and part of me is kind of like playing with the idea of like kind of like a short film, like based on Kotor. If you know me, you probably can guess like what it's focused on. But
T3.
Yeah, like T3, a Star Wars story where T3 is played by T3M4, except no substitutes. That's the tagline there. But
that's right. That's right.
It's just always fun to see, like, kind of through this podcast, we also met Marcus Mosley. We'll have a question from later, like, who's creating Holochronicles of a Jedi and is your co-star, like Traskolgo, of course. And there's just so many creative people out there that KOTOR means a lot to, and it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I had friends, of course, who loved the game, who I grew with, who were playing the game. And I had never gotten to just meet some strangers and talk about this kind of game before until I joined the Unreal Cinema project. And once I started to meet the other people on the server and people just swarmed in, it was the first time I was ever in any sort of a setting where I was surrounded by so many people who knew so much about this niche game I played when I was a kid, that a majority of people who were even Star Wars fans who I knew had never heard of, and only like 3 or 4 friends I grew up with actually ever played. Mm-hmm. And there were some people I've played that game before, but nobody who really had been so passionately affected as the people who joined the Unreal server and started down the path of trying out when auditions were coming out and people were getting ready to try out for all these roles. People were getting so excited and sharing, all their excitement about if they got casted for these characters, certain ones that they thought they were going to try out for and then ended up trying out for other ones later on. And I was uncertain because I came in as a voice actor already, but there was a bunch of people who hadn't even tried voice acting before who were going to go into the project. Mm-hmm. And I was curious on how the whole project would be handled for auditioning. And by the time that the cast was chosen and I got to meet everybody and hear some of their work, there were so many other talented people, even those who hadn't even tried voice acting before, who are really great actors who also have this passion for the character of Revan and all the other characters as well. And I couldn't be more floored in the fact of, from talking with these people, how much KOTOR actually affected their lives and how similar they were moved by the characters and the media of Star Wars. So it allowed me to kind of understand just how much more that people there were out there who were affected so deeply by the game, by what was created and the storyline. So it was exciting because now I have a group of people I can talk to all the time on our cast Discord, and we can joke and talk about the series and get excited about everything new that comes out that we help make. And it's a general feeling of camaraderie now that I never had before over, a series that for fans are so widely, it's so diverse how many people like certain aspects of Star Wars and hate others, and their opinions can go back and forth and they can be angry at each other or argumentative. But there's so many people in the cast now that we all get along and we have a lot that we can share, or different aspects about the game and the storyline that we can get excited about. So it's been really refreshing. It's been a new experience that I never thought I'd have.
Yeah, that's great when you get a bunch of people together, that have a shared passion and can come together and do a project like this. And if anyone listening out there, if you're interested, you can go back on Unreal's channel. I think it was back in August when they posted the cast reveal. If you want to, get a little bit more insight on, who the cast of characters are going to be in kind of these projects. That's a pretty cool way to do that. But Daniel, I guess let's go back, and you just kind of talked about it. You were coming into this as, already, having done some voice acting, pretty accomplished there, and some people just getting into it new. How did the Unreal Cinema KOTOR project, how did that get on your radar? Did that come to you from doing other voice acting and voiceover stuff, or was it because you were following KOTOR stuff, or how did you kind of first find out about this and then, decide to throw your voice into the ring for it?
It was kind of happenstance stuff where I had been kind of interested in doing more KOTOR fan voice content or something, and I wanted to check out if there was any kind of KOTOR projects coming up. I just happened to be looking on YouTube for any sort of KOTOR thing that I could voice for. There was one that I was kind of currently helping out with over at the KOTOR movie saga, and I had joined a new series that they were doing called Revan, and I was playing Malik in that, but the project kind of got put on hold because unfortunately he had been diagnosed with cancer. It had come out that he had to tell everybody on the channel and his team that he was going to have to postpone the Revan series for a while because the unexpected complications, he had to go through therapy, and it was going to be really hard on him, where he couldn't put the time into the series like he wanted to. So there was going to be a massive setback, and it was awful news, and we all felt horrible about it because there wasn't anything a lot of us could do. I think there was some financial help he was able to gain from that we all, everybody could kind of contribute. Yeah. But now looking forward, he's actually been making a recovery now, and I think he said in the next 3 to 6 months, if everything looks good on their radar from his checkups, he can actually announced that he's now cancer-free.
Yeah.
So it's been over a year now since all of that went down, and it was really shocking. And now finally for him to be able to make that statement is really cool. And I'm still looking forward to helping them out on further episodes of that series where I'll be playing Malik on that show. But now with the this project with Unreal, I happen to be looking for more kind of KOTOR related projects that were happening. I wanted to see what kind of stories were being told, and I came across the video that said I'm recreating KOTOR in the Unreal Engine. And at first I was like, oh no, is this another game, that is going to be made that's going to get shut down that somebody's trying to make?
Right.
But I saw the image of Revan on the front, and I was like, that looks really good. And I clicked on it, and I was blown away by the music and the animations, and it looked even better to me than what Aperion was that I was following for all that time back when they were releasing updates for it. And I was like, how can somebody make something that looks this good? And like the animations, the ship, everything, this looks like it could already be turned into a full CG game or, cutscene or whatever. It looked like the Unreal Engine was so amazing that it was able to do all of that. And I don't know how long a person worked on all that, but once I found out via some messages and that he had announced that, oh yes, I'm going to be doing the series, and he created a Discord link, I started looking into that and jumped into the Discord literally the day it was made. I was one of the first 10 people on it, and immediately was like, hey, by the way, my name's Daniel Hodge, and then like here's my link to my Malak that I do, because I've been practicing this for like the past 6 years, and I've always wanted to like voice the character, so I love your project. If you ever need a voice, for Malak, hit me up. And then he was like, oh, sure, I'd love to work with you. That sounds really great. But then it came time to, once he started getting everybody was filling the server, and he jumped that huge subscriber base, like almost gained 50,000 subscribers in like 1 week.
So big.
So it was like, it was amazing. And I was like, I didn't actually think that KOTOR was still that popular, that it would get this kind of a reaction, that just somebody saying, hey, I'm going to make this. And then that many people, that made me feel so good that many people still latched on, that after all these years of nothing about the Old Republic and nothing really going on as far as a remake or a game or anything. And then look at this, suddenly one guy wants to make this series. And then, so then I saw, once people started joining, he said he was going to do a casting call, and that he was going to be doing a free audition for everybody on the server to just come in and try out for characters. So then I'm like, okay, well, at first I was ahead of the line. Now I'm just in line with everybody else, and I now
Right.
have got to earn the spot. So I waited like everybody else did for weeks and weeks until the date for the casting call announcement would go. And I thought about which characters I wanted to try out for. I had to learn the way, because typically I just record my audition and send it in, but there were very specific instructions about how this went down. He treated it very professionally, like they would for a live action casting arrangement. And that was something I had never dealt with before, was actual live action casting techniques or arrangements for how you would do it. So I had to learn, okay, so this is how you do the slate, and this is how you put everything together. So it was a very nice learning experience. But once I put in my audition, I just had to wait. And I was lucky enough that after auditioning for like 5 different characters, I got to be called back for 2, which was Canderous and Malik. And I was so excited, because I thought at first I'd only get called back for 1, but I ended up getting called back for both. And I went through the final audition process, sat in with the different groups as we were called on the expected dates. I did some read-throughs privately with Scott, and then when we did the chemistry reads back and forth with the other actors, each of the competition that I was dealing with, we were all in waiting rooms together talking to each other while we waited to go in and record with the other ones one at a time. And I was still just not getting, I was like, I wanted Malik and Revan's, I wanted Malik and Canderous so bad, both of them. I couldn't decide which one I wanted more. And I had never done Canderous before until that audition, so I wasn't fully convinced that I was really good at the part just yet. because I had never tried that impression until just around that time, because I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to need a Canderous. Well, I don't know if I can do a Canderous. Who's going to be Canderous? So I just figured I'd have to teach myself really quick how to do it. And once it came time for reading the lines of the character, I was still figuring out the voice, and I wasn't fully confident in it. But I was very confident in Malik because I've done him so long, for so many years in different videos. And sitting in there with the other actors and recording was very nerve-wracking, even though I'd been acting for so long, just because it was these characters. And I knew I was only going to walk out with probably ever voicing one. He wasn't going to double cast me. He's like, nobody would get double cast in this. He's going to make sure there's an individual actor for each person, and that's that. But once it came through all the reads, and we finally went home and it was over, and we would talk about which character we would be hearing for, that we were going to be picked for. And everybody else, was keeping quiet on what they were contacted for. But within the next 5 days, I had gotten a message from him on a call, and I hopped on, and he just in person wanted to say, it's like, how would you feel about playing playing Malik and Canderous? How would you like to be Malik and Canderous? Well, because we've tested with everybody else, and like you said, it's just your rendition of both characters. I can't. It's it sounds just like the characters. I can't pick somebody else than you for these two. It's you stand hands and above, like all the other ones right now. So I would love to have you as both of these characters, because I think you'd be perfect for them. And I was like, I would gladly take both characters. I'm like, I will take the extra workload. I would love to do both of these characters justice because of how much they both mean to me. And I'd hate to have to choose between them. And so he's like, all right, congratulations, you're casting them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go run outside now. And then I hung up on him. And
right. Yeah.
But
yeah,
I was
right.
it was one of the happiest moments, I ever had, because now I would get to put in the work and my passion for each of these characters into their performance. And I wouldn't have to hear somebody else's. I would get to portray these characters the way I thought they always should for a series like this, and to put in earnest my feelings into the performance. So that was a very big that was a very big thing for me when I found the project and realized that this can be real. I can actually see, before KOTOR is ever remastered, which it may never be remastered, I'll actually get to see these characters and all this glory of high resolution and graphics and realism. It is a dream come true to be a part of putting something like that together.
Yeah, that's very awesome. It's awesome. I love that you hang up the phone before he can, change his mind. Just make sure you get
okay,
both of the
thank
parts.
you. Bye. Yeah,
I told him, I got to go run now. I got to go run outside.
You can't say no because I hung up. Bye.
Exactly.
No, that's super awesome. And now the Malik, the short has come out. So, dialogue's been recorded. It's out there in the world. How has recording this been? Are you guys doing it in big group recording sessions, over Zoom or something like that? Or are you just recording your own dialogue just off of a script and submitting it? Or how has the recording process been?
Scott has a lot of he has to be there pretty much for any official used recording. He listens to everything very intently and carefully before making a decision. And it's usually we set a scheduled date. If there's one character or more who are involved, he tries to get both actors in there, to play off each other and hear how they read, because it really helps having that other actor there when they're reading their lines. Just to kind of get how the scene to him is going to sound when he hears us talking back and forth, but also picking the recordings he wants. And so far with me, with the short, I didn't get to read with the actor who played Saul, but I was able to just record really quickly, because I had usually been called in ahead of him and been like, hey, look, this is the date that we're going to record. But it was rather short notice, where we had, I guess, a date that was planned, but then it kind of turned into, oh, we need you to record right now. He's like, I've actually just, stuff has come up, and can you record today? I know it's kind of a short notice thing. So I had been at work. I had already had some soda for the day, which is a no-no before you record. And I was super nervous, and I was like, oh no, I haven't, like, usually I have the day to drink some honey and prepare some tea and get my vocal exercise warmed up, but I got to do this as soon as I get home from work when my voice has been, like, ragged from shouting all day at people. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be rough. So I got home and I didn't have much time. As I messaged him as soon as I walked in the door, got upstairs into my booth and got things ready. And I hadn't seen the script ahead of time, because typically he gives me the script well ahead of time, and I'm able to read over things and get used to it before I have to actually sit down and record. This was like first time he brought it out and showed me really quick what was written, the draft, everything completed. And so right then and there, I had to read it and then have him give me the direction as needed, because I had some initial reads I did. And he had to describe the scene. He's like, no, it's a little bit more like this, because I wasn't able to see anything. It was just the script itself with some base describers of the scene that was going to be shown. And it didn't talk about the fight. It only talked about, basically it showed the narration and then some scenic shot descriptions. So I knew that I was going to be talking to Saul towards the end of it, but I didn't get to have him there to play off of. So initially, I read through the Sith code and the lines one way, and it was kind of a more quiet, much more brooding style. And when it came to going through it again, I tried to make it a little bit more angry, a little bit more impulsive. And then by the third pass, I kind of did in an almost completely different tone of being more angry, more yelling almost as the character. And I wanted to try to hit the scene correctly, but I didn't fully understand what was happening in context with each of the words as emphasis. So when it came towards me recording, and Scott was very, very important in like giving me the clues I needed on how to end my pronunciations and enunciations of things. I had to kind of just use his guidance as I went through it, because even I didn't fully understand what was going to be happening while I was reading everything. And yeah, we got like pretty much 3 takes I did of each thing. A couple of them I did like a 4th take or so. And Scott, once he got what he wanted, he was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I needed. I don't need any more. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And I was like, okay, are you sure? I can do more. I can record a lot more, like a lot more takes. He's like, no, you got it. You got it down exactly what I was looking for. So I was like, okay. And then it was just, I'm like, keep me in touch. You need any retakes, or if while you're animating things don't seem to line up, go ahead and get in touch with me. And I'm excited to see it. And he's like, oh yeah, I will. So it was then a long, quiet process of waiting to find out. I only got to see at the very end. He sent me a little snippet of what the character looked like without the jaw. And when I saw the model for the first time, I was just blown away by how cool it looked in the render, because we had never seen even a reveal yet at the time of what Malik was going to look like. And I was so nervous because I was excited to see what this character would finally look like realized in these graphics. And I was so happy by what I saw. So yeah, the process for me for recording has been normally pretty easy. It's just we try to get everybody involved on the recordings when possible. If we can do group reads, we try to do group reads. But for the most part, it's delegated to how Scott needs us at the time and who needs to be there, who's important to be there for the scene. And he sets up a schedule with each of us and checks what are we available for, when can we meet, and we all try to get our stuff to line up.
It sounds like Scott is running a tight ship over there, which is great to hear.
Very professional.
So,
very
professional.
impressive.
Yeah, love to hear that. So, Cassie, I think we might have some fan questions. Now, we asked, our patrons on Patreon, which you can have a look at if you'd like to. It's www.patreon.com/Old Republic Podcast. And also, I think, Cassia, you posted a thing on our Instagram today to see if there were any questions that we had for Daniel. Did we get any responses there?
We did. So this first question, as I mentioned, comes from the Marcus Mosley, the great Traskell Go, and in Hall of Chronicles of a Jedi, he plays Jolie. But this is kind of more of a technical question kind of about the craft, but he says, does Malik or Canderous like pineapple on their pizza?
I would say that Canderous probably definitely would put pineapple on his pizza because it's good nutritional content. Malik, I don't think, has gotten to really bite into a pizza for a good amount of years. I'm sure that Malik, if anything, would turn his nose up at pizza, let alone pineapple, and probably anything less than the smoothies he probably eats every day, sucking through that hole. Like, I would think that pleasure from food is the last thing ever on that guy's mind. So I would say Canderous definitely would put pineapple on his pizza. Malik, it's a stretch. I don't even know if he'd touch a pizza.
Pizza smoothie, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine all your pizza, all those toppings and chunks all blended up and then getting stuck in your throat. Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Like, we should maybe do like a smoothie ad on our podcast, but this is the content they're missing. So
that's right. Now I just want to see some fan art of like a pizza party on the Leviathan. Can we get that? That would be great.
Yeah.
He's making a good little jab too, because I did a little recording that I shared with the cast team because we have so much free time with each other. We make little recordings in character of our characters saying things to each other or making these little jokes. And I made one about Canderous making fun of the fact that there are people out there who don't like pineapple on pizza, and Mandalorians don't really care about what they put on their food because they'll eat almost anything for its nutritional value.
Yeah.
And so I made that in person using Canderous's voice, and then they thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Can you do that, Brian, in Harrison Ford's voice or Keanu Reeves' voice?
Let's see. Just pineapple on that pizza? Whoa. That was pretty good, Keanu Reeves. I think that's my Keanu. I can't do it as Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford would not want pineapple or pizza. He wouldn't want to be bothered with anyone bringing him a pizza. Definitely not.
I hate pizza. Get this away from me. I'm not Han Solo. I'm Indiana Jones. Occasionally Blade Runner, but not Han Solo. Yeah. That kind of wasn't quite as Harrison Ford as I wanted, but there's only one Harrison Ford,
That's right.
Yeah. Mark Hamill does a killer Harrison Ford impression, though.
He's the best. Mark Hamill is like the best voice actor I think there is in the world, and I think Sam Witwer is going to be maybe the next Mark Hamill. I'm just so impressed with them.
I hope so.
Yeah. So this next question is certainly a question. It comes from McClunky Media, and he asks, Malik is only a few letters away from McClunky. Do you think there's any connection?
I'm familiar with that joke too. McClunky.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure if there's any connection between that and Malik, though. Considering his original name was Alec, I don't think that the reason why he picked it would have anything to do with that. Though, if it was, it'd be very humorous.
It'd be hilarious. I think the world is missing a Darth McClunky.
Yeah, Darth McClunky would be extremely. If anything, that would be the bootleg Malik version. From the if Malik was poorly translated or something throughout the game with Chinese subtitles or something like that, it definitely would be Darth McClunky.
Now, what I think happened was they asked George Lucas what Darth Malik's name should be, and he sent over a fax, and it said McClunky, but it didn't, the printer ran out of ink, so they just got Malik on there. And then he's like, they didn't get my name right, and that's why he put it back into Star Wars then.
Oh, yeah, they just had to rearrange it,
Yeah. He's like, I missed out on getting McClunky in there. Need to do it last minute.
I think McClunky is a good name for a Gizka,
Maybe
the head
there you
Gizka that they find on the Ebon Hawk or something. So, we just have so many commercially viable ideas that,
Or a Gonk Droid. It's good.
Or a Gonk Droid.
Oh, yeah. McClunky the Gonk Droid. That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I think Alec kind of is similar to Arabic and Hebrew, for angel. I don't know the proper like sourcing off the top of my head, so that could be wrong. So like, don't trust me. So like, there's your, like, don't take Cassia's word as the word of God, I guess. Like,
That's your slightly suspicious verbiage for today, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. It's like, how like they say like, oh, it's canon, it's the word of God, but then I was like, maybe I was blasphemous there. We did remove one joke from our Dune episode. Have you seen Dune? And it has like Zendaya like kind of throughout it.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
A beautiful film.
Beautiful film, great film. We've done like 2 episodes and we'll probably do 5 more, at some point. But I was like, what if like Zendaya plays Jesus, in some movie? And I was like, maybe this is like gonna make some people uncomfortable, so we took it out. But I was like, why did we take it out? That was hilarious and like, I think relevant. So we're putting it in now, like in
Zendaya can do everything. So
yeah, like have her play Jesus, and like I think it would be an amazing film. So yeah, like you did not know you were getting that content today in the Malik episode with Daniel Hodges, but we got that. So yeah. So Malik, a Kotor story. It was a jaw-dropping. Kind of like appetizer,
Oh
yeah.
I can do puns all day. Like it's
that was like a BuzzFeed headline, I think.
A BuzzFeed headline. I think that's all we really need is more search engine optimization, really. But
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but you kind of see like it jumps back and forth in the timeline, and I'm like, it gets me like champing at the bit for more Malik, more Kotor, more of the story. But like I think it kind of just shows like in a way like these are like 2 best friends, brothers, like, but they're on a bad path, and like the dark side kind of takes that friendship and kind of just ruins it, and then you see them fight, and just like the brutality of Revan to like taking off his jaw. He doesn't finish him off, but he like just a permanent reminder that can never heal it. I mean, it's one thing to lose like an arm, but like a jaw, like it's pretty intense. That's one thing I was wondering is like, why do you think like Revan didn't kill off Malik and like just went for the jaw? Like, what do you think the reasoning was?
I think Malik he knew this rising sense of Malik becoming more and more insubordinate to his orders and more against Revan had this whole plan in his head about where things are going, but he didn't tell or share that with Malik. He just did things and Malik followed him as he always did. And Revan couldn't care at that time, at the height of his power, whether or not Malik really trailed after him or not, but he continued to always be there and always had to be under Revan's thumb. To the point that even when Revan was lost in thought, thinking all these steps forward, he became, probably very much annoyed about Malik's continuous pestering him about, his decisions and where he was going with this and what they should be doing. So the connection was that he still needed Malik to serve a purpose. And that purpose was not complete yet. It was not there yet. And in that plan, Malik felt continuously useless because Revan was doing everything, and he was being just delegated to clean up and everything that came after. He wanted to be on the forefront. He wanted to be, and if anything, Revan's influencer, the one who went out and actually did all these things, where it was Revan pretty much just taking all the glory for himself.
Yeah.
At this time was a point at which they had flipped over from their protection of the galaxy, and now they were reconquering the galaxy, and they both began to hate weakness, and those who were weaker than them were the ones that they hated the most. And Malik was beginning to feel like he was more and more inferior to Revan because of all the glory and power that Revan was obtaining, and he was being left with nothing but the scraps. So Malik became increasingly more filled with rage, and he wanted to claim that meaning for himself. He wanted to strip Revan from it and show that he was stronger at this point, that his way was right and that Revan's was wrong. So he decided to finally try to prove that to both himself and to Revan by engaging him in open conflict, which he was not ready for. And Revan strategically had to put him down in a way where he couldn't just take his life and go find another apprentice, but also because this was still in the back of his mind, a friend, but was still a nuisance to him. So he wanted to teach him respect and his place, and by strategically taking out the part of him that was the first to turn against Revan, which was his mouth. So by taking away his jaw, he took away his ability to directly, verbally contest with him, as well as demonstrating in a non-lethal manner that does not inflict a wound that is to make him a less efficient warrior, but to demonstrate the difference between them and how easily he could overpower him at that moment and also take his life from him if he felt like it. And he had to put Malak in his place, which set the seeds for his betrayal later on because of his hatred. That growing hatred that Malak felt after that moment became even more powerful for growing Malak as a Sith, because Revan wanted him to learn to hate him, and to feel that hatred, to become a more powerful apprentice. And that was an instructional moment in the Sith, is if you can't be better than me, then you better not raise your hand to me. Otherwise, I'm going to have to put you down in even worse ways, or I will take a part of you every time that you fail to take me out. Because the goal of the master is to raise the apprentice to become better than themselves, to where they are at that point that they can actually really contest them and take their seat of power. But Revan was disappointed in Malak because Malak couldn't even tell the difference between them in that moment.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like, the difference between Jedi and Sith, because Jedi, like, in theory, like, sometimes, like, in the prequels and everything, they don't really have as much of an open dialogue as I think they should, but, like, in theory, like, the Jedi are more equal, kind of like a round table, or, like, kind of like the holocron is a square, you know, kind of like each side is equal, you know, but, like, the Sith, like, kind of their symbol, like, their holocron is like a triangle, and it's like they're all trying to get to that top spot. And just like when Revan and Malak were Jedi, like, they were more best friends, kind of like collaborators. Like, I kind of think it was easier for Malak, you know, whatever we want to call him, like, to kind of be like the best friend, the Lancelot, you know, to like Revan's Arthur, you know. But I think when you're a Sith, you kind of just want everything for you. You want to be the one at the top. So it's just interesting to see, like, in the Star Wars galaxy, what the dark side does to, like, the power of friendship, you know.
Back when they were still in the Jedi Temple together, they were friends and companions, but by the time that the war happened, they slowly grew to become rivals. And their rivalry didn't fully blossom until the Sith Emperor ultimately chose Revan to lead his armies instead of Malak. And that was the tipping point to where Malak thought that he would be chosen, if anything, or that he was the more... It set them against each other because now there was something that divided their power and their accomplishments besides just each other, because they reinforced each other as a team, but at that point they were now direct rivals to each other in gaining power.
Yeah, and that's just interesting. And then you kind of see, like, flash forward, like, Malak has his jaw. Like, I don't know how long that is after the duel, but you just kind of see Malak, like, learn maybe the wrong lesson, and it's like, let's blast, you know, it's not Terrace, it's Telos, and then Terrace comes later, you know, but it's kind of like, he's kind of like the Howard Stark that's constrained by the technology of his time, you know, like, he wants to be like the Darth Vader with the... Actually, Darth Vader doesn't like Death Stars, now that I really think about it. Like, I guess he's like more like the Tarkin, like he wants to Tarkin it up and like blow planets and everything up, but like
Take everything out. Yeah.
We don't have that, we just have like, lots of ships and like it's like shoot the planets, but like how much time do you think passed like between the duel and the bombing of Telos?
I would say hours to days in my interpretation, because it's obvious the fight was over the situation of Telos to me, and ultimately the decision that was made on it. And despite the fact that he was told explicitly, from what it seems like, to wait for Telos to have a chance to surrender, and gave the appropriate timeline, Malik had no intention, after finally getting his disfigurement restored, of waiting for a response from Telos, and more so because of its symbolism for the Republic, and as a world that was so important. He wanted to demonstrate the Sith resolve to taking out, wiping out the Republic then and there, and leaving the scar, because the important strategic element about Telos was wiping out a good portion of the forces that could rally to challenge the Sith. And if things could be resolved peacefully, Revan would rather conquer through maintaining resources than wiping them out, while Malak would rather be brutal and set an example to the rest of the galaxy what their intent was, as well as the Sith and their power, and through fear demonstrate their ability to wield power and rule the galaxy. So, despite Revan's direct orders and despite the punishment that had been laid down on him, Malak still, in that moment, demonstrated that he was not going to do as Revan pleased. He was not going to accept his punishment or his lesson. Rather, it furthered his resolve to walk in the opposite direction of Revan and become separate, different from him in any way that he could, so that he could prove that he was better than Revan. So he allowed in that moment his anger and his hate to simply demonstrate that in this moment, as I'm receiving this jaw, I am not going to become Alec, Revan's friend, anymore. I am now Malik. I am now the person who is going to beat Revan and eventually one day kill him. So I'm taking this under my command. I am taking this war in my direction, where I'm still following orders as necessary that my master dictates, but I will ultimately leave all judgments on how to handle it in my own care.
Yeah. It's just so interesting because I think, like, Revan, like, everyone just kind of thinks he's so smart, but, like, that's the thing about the Sith is, like, they never think they're going to be betrayed, and it's like, it's plot twist, you're going to be betrayed, like, because that's the way the Sith, like,
right,
just,
yeah.
And it's like Malik's decision was made that day, so for me, it's just, like, so interesting to see, like, Revan doesn't spare Malik, and I think that's out of respect for, like, what their friendship was, like, and it's like, I think it's just such an interesting relationship that might be a little bit understated, like, in the game of KOTOR, but, like, if someone kind of draws that out, it's actually kind of tragic and touching, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And as Revan is as a character, there is that theory, that thought, that Revan never actually fell completely to the dark side, that others sensed the dark side within him, but even then, because of how strong that was, they couldn't sense the light that was there as well on the other side. And Revan was able to control his emotions despite letting them fuel his power, and was able to keep himself thinking about what was needed to be done and not let his passions rule over him, his lust for power or for bloodshed or any of that control him. And even when other Sith would see him as weak or as not being strong because he wasn't letting the dark side fuel or rule over him, he was able to make those kind of choice moments that any other Sith would not have done. Any other Sith in that moment would have stricken down their apprentice and found another one. But Revan was still seeing through his plans to the end and keeping his control tightly held inside about what he wanted done at the right times. And he was deciding in that moment that even though he could easily kill his apprentice for what he did, he was going to keep him alive for what he needed in the future. but even he did not expect that the opportunity that Malak would take in the future, believing through their past of being together as warriors and wanting to fight, that he would eventually, if anything, he was always safe if he stayed on a different ship, because Malak would only ever try to engage him in open combat, fighting each other one-on-one. He didn't expect Malak, in the person he became now, to be capable of utilizing other resources or tactics as avenues to destroying him. And that was where Revan had underestimated the person that Malak had become after their separation from each other.
They're just such interesting characters, and like, I mean, that's something I always try to be like, maybe it's like, I'm like, maybe am I taking these characters too seriously? But I'm like, there is like some depth to kind of like explore here, you know? And it's like, we run a like cool Star Wars podcast, and you're like on an even cooler like Star Wars project. So like, I think we like kind of have to study these characters, you know, like kind of understand them, like, but like, I guess, do you have like any teases you can tease like about like the future, about future Unreal Cinema projects, or like what the first season would be?
Nothing I can tease exactly, but I can say that we have had discussions on the next short, and we've got big plans for getting season 1 kind of all bringing it into focus this year, and to have the first episode to be expected relatively sooner than later. It looks like we've got a good chance, you know, on like with episode 1 of season 1 coming very soon in the near future. And I'm excited to see how those pair off with the shorts, and what we'll be able to see, kind of like keeping both of those in tandem side by side, maybe flicking back between shorts and episodes as they release. But the goal being that we now focus on getting episode 1 out and completed, and getting all the lines read for the full season will be pretty soon, where we'll just get it all knocked out, and we'll get everything recorded, and then the episodes can be worked on, and all the lines will be ready, and we'll just have the whole season done as soon as possible, and start getting it released for everybody. So we're trying to amp up this year in the development process and the release. You know, as soon as we can get it out there, as soon as we know that the quality's there and it's done, it'll be out and in people's hands.
Awesome.
Oh, very awesome. Very awesome. Can't wait for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess like a few little rapid fire questions like that aren't scripted. Like, you're always welcome to say like, yeah, I'm not going to answer that, but like would you have any like dream characters you'd like to voice in the future, like Star Wars or otherwise, like in the future?
Characters, I would love to one day voice my own Star Wars character. If I could get an original character that had never been voiced by anybody, that for me would be, because I spend so much time doing impressions, and I respect the actors who create the voices for these characters, because they're the ones who brought them to life in the first place. But having a character that I could uniquely call my own, or is just a created character from somebody who's really well written, who I could voice act in the universe, it would mean so much more to me, because then it is something that I can just feel free to put myself into and not have to restrict myself to copying another actor's portrayal. Any existing characters that I'd love to play, I'd always love to do like Emperor Palpatine or Darth Maul, or in KOTOR already. There's so many characters I'd love to play in the future that are side characters when they appear in the show. I want to try out for Vandar Tokari, you know, on the Jedi Council. I want to try out for maybe Zelka Forn, you know, the medical doctor on Terrace. I'd love to try out for so many of these characters, Sith troopers, anything that I can sink my teeth into in the extras in the background that I can fulfill as a character. And put in the effort into bringing them to life for the series if I get the chance. So as of right now, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like, part of me is like, what if I could be like some random like person that gets shot, like, like I don't know, like a Republic soldier or something, like in the first
That's
minute.
pretty easy to do. Yeah. There's always, I'm expecting some kind of cameos we'll have from who knows what sources when the full episodes are out and we get to hear different lines of people and be like, oh yeah, that was me. Like there's so many places for that where you can sneak people in.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fine with like having a Juhani who is not Russian, like I could maybe do that as well. But so fan cast, say it had to be like a live action movie, who would you fan cast for Malik?
Oh, that's a tough one. I have discussed that with so many people. Back in the day, I was a really big advocate for Mark Strong, as so many people are, because he's another bald guy in cinema. But the more I thought about his voice, and the more I thought about his age, and I don't know, he and his acting style. As an actor now, I pay far more attention to how people portray their characters, to where if you give an actor a certain way, despite how they appear, they're going to treat the character's portrayal a certain way. I've really liked Tom Hardy to the point that I think Tom Hardy could very much portray Malik, and he can fit into so many different types of characters, including these intimidating masked characters and stuff like that. But he transforms so well for all the character roles that I wouldn't feel insecure about him getting the role, because I knew he would make something of Malik that we'd never seen before, and it would be a really interesting take on the character. And of other actors besides I've seen of Tom Hardy, I'd probably even go, because I'd have to pick somebody who sounds like him, or at least has that kind of way with the voice that could really bring that character out. And aside from Tom Hardy, I think I've also thought about Dave Bautista, or even what's his name? Even
Henry Cavill?
I haven't thought about him. No, actually, no. Henry Cavill's in so much right now. Like it's so weird, because the more he spreads himself out, the harder it is for me to look at any of those characters, because I keep seeing Superman or Henry Cavill. It's like he's in so many things. It's like,
The Witcher.
I wish there was a couple lesser known actors out there who I could recommend for it. That there's a few really good British ones out there that I wish I could pick their names out of a hat right now, but I can't think of. But yeah, those kind of actors right now, if I had to pick for like American localized, definitely be a good choice for Malik. They can put on an accent. They know how to portray these characters. That would be my go-to. And of course, everybody talks about Canderous. Like I would definitely pick the guy who played Thanos for Canderous. Why can't I think of his name?
Josh Brolin. Yeah.
Josh Brolin. Yeah, Josh Brolin. I've thought so long and hard about it. I can't really think of anybody who could possibly, in acting right now that I've seen, do better than a Josh Brolin for that character. If anything, I would wish that Josh Brolin it would play, because his acting style is very Westerner, and it's very much a very quiet, very serious tone. And even in some more comedic things I've seen him in, he still's got that gritty. If he could play something like Canderous, who was just like an energetic badass who was happy to be here, and like portray that kind of excited demeanor of Canderous over just the brooding quiet one he kind of always does, I would be totally on board with Josh Brolin as Canderous, because I want to see the bloodthirsty Josh Brolin, and that would be fantastic. If he could nail that performance as Canderous, that excited demeanor, he'd be perfect.
Yeah. And who are your I don't know if you have multiple ones or just one in particular, Brian, but who is your fan cast for Malik?
Those are all good picks that were just thrown out there. Tom Hardy is one of mine. But I think if I was just picking one, I would pick Tahar Rahim, who was in The Serpent and The Mauritanian this past year, which is what most people would probably know him for. He's excellent. I think he was born in France, so he has this very like distinct kind of accent, and I think that having an interesting voice, like Daniel had said for the Star Wars villain, I think that that's important, and I think that he looks the part. He could definitely look like Malik. I think he looks a lot like Malik in the Unreal adaptation there. So so Tahar Rahim would be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned Henry Cavill. Part of me is like, that's probably, maybe not the best casting, but it is certainly a casting, but like...
it is casting, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like, he kind of has the physicality of like a younger Malik, and then, like, tragically he would lose like his hair and then like his jaw and stuff. Like, he plays good villains, like in Mission Impossible Fallout, and like, I don't know, maybe an argument can be made, and like if you listen to The Witcher, I'm like, yeah, this voice, it's really good. I really like it, So maybe that's me just like being a Henry Cavill stan. I don't know, but
just put it out into the universe and see what happens.
Yeah. They'll probably be like, yeah, no, that's never gonna happen now. But then I think that Sam Worthington, from Avatar and Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans and many other films like Man on a Ledge, has an interesting forehead. Like, I'm like, if we had him bald, like, he would have an interesting forehead, like, which I think is a good, part
That's
of, like,
true.
being bald, like, cool, he looks good bald, so it's like, that would certainly be a casting as well. Like, and my last one would be Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Like, I think he can just play a good villain, has a good voice.
Oh, yeah. That was another one I was thinking would be a really good pick. Yeah, I remember that.
Get some Danish people, some
Mm-hmm.
Danes up in this joint, for KOTOR. And then that's actually sort of my Canderous fan cast as well. So.
Yeah, I can see that.
And like he just plays both of them, and no one questions it. Like it could be an Easter egg kind of to the KOTOR, the Unreal Cinema KOTOR adaptation, where like Malik and Canderous are played by the same voice actor.
Yeah,
so.
and they never ever meet each other, so that works there as well.
Yeah. So did you guys kind of have any fan cast for Canderous, or do you guys kind of share your Malik fan cast as well? Like, I don't know.
I'm trying to remember who I fan cast is Canderous. Josh Brolin is the obvious pick, I think.
Yeah.
And I think actually, because he was just Gunny in Dune, I think that that character is probably pretty similar to Canderous in a lot of ways. So
yeah, I mean, like for Canderous, I think like Ken Watanabe and Idris Elba would be good too. But like,
I think that was my fan cast. Yeah, needed the.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan was one that I thought about as well too, because of his. If you could match Jeffrey Dean Morgan's personality and his acting style to Josh Brolin, that would be the ideal merger for me.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
I think you'd want to have someone, like Jeffrey Morgan or Josh Brolin, have kind of that dry sarcasm to him, and I think that that's what you need for a good Canderous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the last question I have is, can you do any other impressions of any of the other KOTOR cast? It could be Revan, it could be Bastila, it could be HK, it even could be T3. Like, did you have any, or are you going to be like, no?
Oh yeah, I've got on my social media, both my YouTube and my SoundCloud, I have impressions of Koto, Fishy Guy. I've got HK-47. I've got Vandar. I've got all sorts of characters on there that I've done the impressions for that I love to do from Star Wars.
Oh, that's awesome.
Count Dooku.
We'll have to check those out for sure. Where can our listeners find that YouTube channel?
A YouTube channel is just YouTube at Daniel Hodge, voice actor, or just Daniel Hodge typically on there. Old YouTube channel name used to be Dan Hodge, but then when we swapped to actual names, I just put it on there. So just search Daniel Hodge or Daniel Hodge voice and you'll find me on YouTube easily.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on, and we cannot wait to see more of this Unreal Cinema Kotor universe, and just kind of like, we'll watch your career with great interest, like, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we sign off here, is there any other upcoming projects you want to pitch, or is there any good way if anyone wants to connect with you or point you in the direction of other voice acting work or anything like that?
Well, yeah, if you can always get a hold of me via my Discord if I've got a connection through there. But typically the best way is to try and reach me via my social media first. You can reach me at Twitter at Daniel Hodge VA, and that would probably be the best way, because getting in message through there, I can give my Discord or give email and go throughout things. I also have a Facebook page, Daniel Hodge voice actor, there where you can message me, leave comments on my videos. I'm always posting any of the new stuff I have coming out. Nothing in the pipeline I can talk about at the moment. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out now that I've voiced in that are slowly being released and trickled out, but I can't give firm dates on when to expect them just yet. Of projects I'm currently working on, I'm still working actively on the video game Ethereal Clash of Souls. I'm the official for the character builds and stuff like that. I'm the announcer for the character builds there and going over each of the characters as they're released. I did the trailer for them. You can find them on YouTube at Ethereal Clash of Souls. They also have a Discord and a website of undyinggames.com. And that MOBA, I'll be able to release more of my involvement in the future for any characters I voice or other aspects I do for the company.
Well, thank you, Daniel, so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming on. Like we said, we're very excited about the project. We're excited what we've seen so far, and now we're excited to see what's coming next. Can't wait for that. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Old Republic podcast. May the Force be with you.